If you've ever wanted to use a click track at church, but you've never started because you're a little bit intimidated, this is the video for you. I'm going to walk you through how to set it up, how to get started and teach your band how to use it, and avoid some of the pitfalls that some people get into when starting with a click track. Hey, if we haven't met yet, my name is James Attaway, and I help church sound techs, worship leaders, and tech directors eliminate the mystery and frustration around sound at church. I also spent many years on stage as a bass player and a worship leader, so I know my way around from both sides of the microphone. If you want help with stuff like this, go ahead and mash that subscribe button, and welcome to the club of sound ninjas. So if you're wanting to get started with a click, what are some of the things that you might be after, or why might you want to start having a click track as part of your worship set? One of the most obvious ones is consistent tempo, so that everybody knows this is the tempo that we're playing at and nobody gets surprised or left behind when one person gets excited and they start to rush. Conversely, during early morning rehearsal, you might be a little more tired and the tempo might be a little more relaxed. We want to avoid that so that we can set up ourselves consistently and perform at a consistent tempo. That way we're not wondering what tempo is it going to be today and then we're trying to catch up. It's a lot easier to fall into your muscle memory and really get in the zone of playing music if you know what the tempo is going to be and you're not having to adapt to that on the fly. Another benefit is tightness. When everybody's aiming at the same target, you're more likely to hit it and play well together. When we have a click determining our tempo, we know where we should come back in and we can have more impact in our playing because we're not guessing on when that entrance should be. When we're not chasing somebody else's version of the tempo, or if it's not shifting, we can actually play with better timing altogether. And finally, it's helpful if everybody drops out and then everybody knows exactly when to come back in, even if it's dropped down to say just a pad, or we have a little bit of open space in the middle of our song. We know exactly when to come in. Nobody's guessing at when that downbeat is. The other benefit is that if you can play with a click, you can also introduce tracks into your worship set. That's a discussion for another time, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but for a lot of people, it can be helpful to augment your worship team, and that's not possible if you can't play with a click. Now, when it comes to who gets to hear the click, anybody that's leading needs to hear the click. So even if you're leading one part of an intro, even if you're just leading one part of a song, you need to be hearing the click, and that's basically everybody on stage. Now, if there are some singers that are never going to be leading or singing by themselves, they might get a pass. Your saxophone player might get a pass. Other than that, pretty much everybody needs to be hearing the click. Now, when you're ready to start making that jump, I don't recommend that you use it on every single song on a Sunday service. Start at rehearsal and just play one song with the click. This gets people used to it. It's a low pressure environment because it's just rehearsal, and it can ease them into it, and they can make all their mistakes without having the congregation staring at them, wondering what's falling apart. After one song of trying it in rehearsal, then in subsequent weeks, start adding it to more and more songs until people get more used to it. Then you can start to introduce it on a Sunday as well, as your team has gotten more acclimated to playing along with the metronome altogether. Then you can use it almost all the time because there still is a time to turn off the click and just kind of let the tempo linger or flow a little bit. Now, you might be wondering, how do I actually get the metronome into the sound system? And my recommended way is to start with a phone app and get a connector that goes from your phone to a 1/4-inch adapter. So out of your phone, you'll probably come out 3.5 millimeter, either straight out of your phone if you're old school like me, or you have to get an adapter that's USB-C or a lightning connector. Then you can plug that 1/4-inch cable into a direct box, the same kind of box that you would plug in an acoustic guitar. This mic cable now can go to the soundboard, and on the soundboard, be sure to make sure that it is unassigned from the main left-right output. You do not want to accidentally turn up the click in the middle of the worship set. Ask me how I know. It's really bad. You don't want to do it. Now you can send that signal to your in-ear monitors, either assigning it to a channel on your personal monitor mixers or having it available as in the aux send that feeds each person's in-ear monitors. Another question that comes up is, how do we set the rhythm for it? And I highly recommend that you set it to eighth notes. Even though the 1/4 note is the beat, the eighth notes give us a little bit more subdivision, and it gives us another way we can keep our levels down, and it doesn't have to be blaring and competing with everything else in our in-ear monitor mix. For drummers especially, having the eighth note allows you to hear the click in between the kick and the snare. So the level doesn't have to be on top of the kick and the snare. It can be in between so they can learn to make the offbeat groove with whatever they're they're playing. For everybody other than the drummer, I actually recommend that you keep the click level quite low so that you can hear it when the drummer is not playing, but when the drummer's playing, you just follow the drummer. This brings me to one of my favorite sayings from my friend Travis, who has done some of our other drum videos on here, in that it's more important to be together than it is to be right. Just to give you an idea of what level I'm talking about, let me play it and I'll mix the click in so that it's not really audible during the loud parts, but then when the band comes down, you can hear it plenty. So let me play it and I'll show you what I'm talking about. We don't need it that loud in this section. Tuck it back here. There's plenty. We can hear the drums, right? We can hear the guitars. All that should take center stage. Now as the drums pop out, now we can hear the click. It doesn't need to be blaring. If it was blaring, this is gonna bleed from in-ears back into the microphone. That's not really great. Some people like to pan their click to one side or the other, and that can help them identify it and keep it lower so that it doesn't get lost in the mix. Now, I highly recommend doing this, but I also personally just like my click right in the middle. It just feels right for me right there in the center. However, if you have a singer that likes to pull one in-ear monitor out, make sure that they pan the click to the opposite side of that so that the click isn't going ding, 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 and then they hold their vocal mic right beside it, and then everybody in the house hears it and you wonder, what on earth is that sound? It would be pretty obnoxious to hear in the middle of the service. Now, of course, I don't recommend anybody pulls out one side of their in-ear monitors, because then you can turn it up too loud and not notice it, and you can get yourself into a pinch and damage your hearing. So try to keep both in-ear monitors in, but not everybody follows sound advice, so tell them to pan it if they're gonna pull one out. If you're wanting to introduce this to your worship team, you might have gotten some pushback, and if you haven't already, you might get some in the future. So where are people going to have arguments against using a click track? The first one is for musicians that are not skilled enough to actually play well with a metronome and a click. Having a click highlights their lack of timing skill, and that can be painful for them, and so they might say, nah, I don't want to do that. However, that gives us an opportunity to lead people into better musicianship and more excellence in bringing our craft to church to serve others. And every great musician started off as a pretty lousy musician, unless maybe you're Jacob Collier. That guy might be a little bit different, but for the most part, everybody's on the learning curve. This just helps to move some people up along on the learning curve. There are other musicians that don't want to play with a click because they want to be creative and flow with it. And there are times to flow, and you can definitely shut off the click if you need to, but for the most part, most of our songs are going to be at a pretty consistent tempo, and even if they're not, we can shut off the click, tap in a new tempo, and start again. But it gives us a reference point for being able to play well together. The third type of pushback you might get is anybody that doesn't want to be using in-ear monitors in the first place. In-ear monitors can be a tough transition to make, and I get it. It's not fun to go from hearing everything around you to being fully isolated, but I've got a bunch of tips and tricks for making that transition inside the Audio for Worship Leaders course, and that's available at the Attaway Audio Academy. I'll drop a link in the description below where you can get more info on how to sign up. It walks you through how to set it up, how to teach your team how to mix them, and how to get everything going so that it's a frictionless process and you don't feel isolated from the rest of the worship team or the congregation. Here are some other considerations that you might want to take if you're getting started with using a click track. The first is to find an app that allows you to tap in the tempo so that if somebody just starts a song freeform before the click has started, we can start the click after they've started at about the same tempo that they're going already. You can tap it in, hit go, and then everybody can adapt to where that beat is. That's just part of creativity sometimes. The other suggestion I have is to get an app that allows you to set tempos for different songs so that you can easily dial in the tempo and you don't have to go and switch in and dial it in precisely or type in a number. Just hitting a button and hitting go is a lot easier than trying to get it dialed in precisely. If you're using an app on a phone, please turn off notifications. I know I probably shouldn't have to say this, but you need to turn off notifications. Nobody needs to hear your do-do-do when you get a text message in the middle of a service. Whether or not you have pro musicians, there are some times that you just need to stop the click and play music. Sometimes you might get off the click and it might be so far off that getting back on it would be more distracting than just playing together how you are. Another time you should stop the click is if you're in a musical section that just needs to have a little bit more space to it, and it doesn't need to be so rigid. Especially if you're wanting to do something a little bit more creative or unplanned, sometimes having no click can help you go to the places you want tempo-wise. So I hope this was helpful for you in getting started with a click track. Again, if you want to check out my Audio for Worship Leaders course on getting set up with your in-ear monitors, check that out through the link in the description below. Don't forget to hit subscribe and mash that thumbs up if you like this video. And remember, it's all about the low end, avoid the sound tech solo, and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. We'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.